Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to find more peace in your heart and in your life, then do we have the What is Peace show for you. Today I'll be talking with Lexie Brockway Potamkin, a human rights activist, counselor and minister, former Miss World USA, a speaker before the UN, a collaborator with the Dalai Lama and Tibetan monks, and the author of a brilliant series of books including What is Spirit, What is Peace, and What is Love. And that's just what I want to talk with her about today, about what is peace, how they're each interrelated, that plus death and laughter too, and how we can bring more peace into our lives. That plus we'll talk about office room rainbows, Mom Venice and wave runners, train rides from Idaho, hugging an Aunt Laura, studying amoebas, becoming enthusiastic, monks on inner tubes, who on earth is the toad? Gotcha. And what in the world? You are always smiling has to do with anything. So welcome to the show, Lexie. Are you ready to shine?
I sure am. Hello, Michael.
Woohoo! Hello,
Yay!
Lexie. I can tell from this chemistry already, we are going to have a lot of fun here today. So before we dive in, we're going to talk briefly about your story, then we're going to dive into peace. But before we do that, what's one thing we can do in this moment right now, to bring more peace into our lives?
You can take a deep breath
Mhm.
and you can focus on the present, right now, the here and now.
Woohoo! All right, going back in time, what can you tell us about your dad?
He was an incredible human being. He was my wisdom teacher.
Hmm.
I was his best friend. I was
Yep,
the youngest of three,
yep.
and I used to hop around like a little toad. He used to call me Toad. That was my nickname. And when I look back at who he was really my first Tibetan monk. Um, he was very peaceful, very calm. He had no ego because he thought it was more important to be loving
Mm,
than to be right.
I love
And he
it.
used to say that to me all the time, you know. And I remember being a teenager, and, teenagers are always acting out and being a little bratty. And he'd come into my room and hug me and say, "I'm sorry." And I'd say, "No, I'm the one that's sorry. I was the jerk, not you." But that was his way of really teaching me the non-egoic way of going, of just going for what's more important, which is love and not being right. And I look back at him and I go, wow, was I lucky? I mean, I lost him at a very young, tender age, and that was very difficult. But I was very, very fortunate to have had the father that I had for 19 years.
How did he come about? What made him him?
I believe he was born that way. He was the youngest of 12.
Mhm.
And I used to ask his brothers and sisters, and they said, when little Mickey, that was his name, came out, he was just this beautiful, peaceful soul.
Mhm.
And the youngest of 12, he was probably babied a little bit by his brothers and sisters. But I remember people telling me growing up, "Mickey's your father? Oh my goodness, he's incredible. He's so loving and he's so peaceful and he doesn't have a temper." And I go, "Yeah, that's my father." I mean, he was like incredible. He came out that way.
Beautiful. And we're going to dive into your mom here in a little bit.
Mm,
What did your parents, they were your teachers, teach you about
yes.
making your life the argument?
Well, they used to say you have to make yourself strong. And when my father died, I was 19, and of course, my mother then became the most important person in my life. And she used to say, life is for the living. You have to make yourself strong.
Mm.
Love never dies, which I talk about in my book. And so we have to hold on to the love that we shared, and we have to move forward because, heaven and earth are right here,
Mm.
and we have to make the best of it. And we have to stay positive and we have to make ourselves strong, and we will get through this. And we did get through it together. And it was very difficult. But my mother, again, was my other wisdom teacher because she taught me to look within and make myself strong when adversity hits. And I was sort of teaching myself as I look back on it to be more resilient. And the way you become resilient is being grounded, having some sort of a spiritual path for yourself, relying on others to help you through connection,
Yeah.
with other people is terribly important when you're going through adversity and something difficult. And so I made myself reach out to other people to heal. I spent a lot of time going inward and having, I think, my mother and my brother and my sister at the time when my father died really helped me get through that very difficult time. So it's making yourself strong and reminding yourself to do that.
Were you already on this path? And one book comes to mind that you read early on, James Allen, As a Man Thinketh.
Yes. I read that book when I was 17 years old.
Yeah,
So I was a junior in high school.
yeah.
And I remember the first line, and it said, "You are literally what you think you are." And I remember going, wow, wow, my thoughts are that powerful. When you think about what is consciousness, consciousness is our thoughts. And so I remember at 17 going, wow, I better start thinking more positively. I better start reframing things. And it did put me on a spiritual path. And I used to carry it at that time, As a Man Think was a little yellow book.
Yeah.
And I had it in my purse. And whenever something difficult came up, whether in high school and then later on in college, I referred to that book. As a Man Thinketh. You are literally what you think you are. So if you change your mind, you will change actions and you will change your life. And that was a game changer for me at 17.
Woohoo!
I was fortunate to find that book.
So from there, and we're gonna double back on your story a few times here, stories within stories. How in the world did you end up in beauty pageants? And I've got to think also this has to do with As a Man Thinketh.
I never thought about a beauty pageant before, to be honest, but I was asked by the JCs if they could sponsor me in a beauty pageant.
Mhm.
And I remember I was taken back and I said, I never really thought about a beauty pageant. I don't even watch them on television, really. And they said, well, you were a foreign exchange student. You have very good grades. You're going to be graduating the top 10 of your class. It looks like you have very good values, and you're the kind of young woman we want to sponsor for this pageant. And I remember saying, well, I don't know what my talent would be. I mean, I have been taking jazz and ballet most of my life. And they said,
Mhm.
well, great, put a routine together and we'll sponsor you. And what attracted me to it is they said, if you win, you get a scholarship for college. And I knew that would help my parents out.
Yeah.
They were willing to pay for my college, but I thought, wow, if I could get a scholarship and not have them pay for it. And then, of course, I won and got a scholarship. So it really did work out. But it wasn't really on my radar per se.
As you are now, how many pageants were there along the way to Miss World USA?
Well, I was when the JCs asked me, again, I was 17 in high school. I was Miss, I was in the Miss Luddington pageant, and then I went on to the Miss Michigan pageant. And I did not win that pageant. And that would have gone on to the Miss America. So that, there's three pageants. There's a Miss America, Miss USA, and Miss World USA. So, but I just thought it was great experience. And because I was Miss Luddington, I still got a scholarship for college. And it was wonderful. I was living in Michigan, Luddington, Michigan, and I was going to high school there. And it was just a great experience. So then I go to college, and my roommate says, let's go and try out for the Miss Washington State for the Miss World USA pageant.
Yeah.
And she knew I had been in one pageant before. And I said, oh, I don't know, maybe. So I said, okay. So we drove up to Orcas Island and we both entered that contest. And lo and behold, I won, and I was Miss Washington State. And then later went on to win Miss World USA. So that's
You-
how that happened.
You're so humble about it, but what my vision is that you put yourself in flow. You're like, okay, we'll just see what happens. Okay, we'll just see what happens. And doubling back around to peace, what greater way to live than just saying, okay, opportunity knocks. All right, we'll just see what happens.
Well, thank you for reminding me of that. It really was putting myself in flow. I wouldn't have been able to articulate that at that time, but it is something I very much believe in. And I've often said that opportunities are like butterflies.
Mhm.
When they fly by, you have to grab them or they just keep flying by. And I have kind of lived my life that way where I trust my intuition. When an opportunity comes up, I try to get into that flow. And now I'm more conscious of what that means. I wasn't so back then. And that's where I feel like you create your own luck. And if you ask the universe to serve you and what's for the greatest good of all, including yourself, and you kind of get into that flow, miracles do happen.
Woohoo! So it's interesting. We're talking about peace. We're going to talk about love. We're going to talk about spirit. And I keep coming back to death as not an end, not as the final ending, but as a doorway even to something greater, someplace that we've been. But I want to talk about your mom's passing because my guess is that actually brought you greater peace.
Well, it did. I lost my father at 19. And at that point, I did not want to lose him. And I remember clinging on to him and saying, please don't die. I'm not ready to have you die. You won't be able to see me graduate from college and get married. Please don't die. So that was my consciousness, rightfully so, at 19
Yeah.
when my father died. So then you fast forward, my mother died 7 years ago. And since then, I've acquired a little bit of knowledge. So I said to my mother, you know, you're the greatest mom ever. I love you. I'm going to hold you in my heart forever. Love never dies. You are the most important person in my life. I laid my hands on her and she opened her eyes and said, I love you. And I said, Mom, I love you. And she died peacefully. And for that second, I felt the greatest peace I think I've ever felt in my life. So I did it two ways, clinging and not being conscious and letting go. And I always say the greatest gift you can give a dying person is permission to go. And I gave her permission that it was okay to go. It was her time. I'm going to be okay. I will miss you, but your love will live in my heart forever. So doing it that way brought me great peace.
How did it, you said it was an epiphany. How did it change things? Or was it just that it's just opened you up even more? In fact, there's a concept that you talk about, I believe, in several of your books about the power of being defenseless.
Yes, it did open me up to. I've always said these words, love never dies, but after my mother died, I feel her. I feel her presence. I ask her and angels to come forward in my life when I'm going through something difficult. And I can say I absolutely feel her. I also see her in rainbows. She often appears to me in rainbows.
And in your
And
office.
and in my office, so and I believe that we have to ask people on the other side or angels to come into our lives. They would not just invade our lives. So I purposely, with intention, ask her to come and help me deal with something or just come and be with me and give me comfort and heal me. And I feel her. So she's right here. She's just right here.
Beautiful. And that takes us to, there's a Jewish term, shalom, and then a sister word, shalem. And I think that has to do with exactly what you're talking about. What can you tell us about these two words?
Well, the words are about peace and feeling peaceful and being in touch with other realms and other places out there that bring us peace. Shalom to you and shalom.
And shalom, whole again. And even with her passing, we can choose to be whole again. You have, in a sense, not just reframed, but you've opened up to the possibility of there being more.
That is true because when she first died, I did feel there was a hole in my heart, and I feel completely whole now. And that really is, what peace is all about. And it's opening that part of your heart with intention to allow the love to come forward and to release the pain. Obviously, you must go through a grieving process and you need to let go. And that takes time. And there's no magic bullet for that. It takes some people a few months, it takes some people a few years. That's all fine. It's very important to eventually let go. And then when you let go, allowing the love to come back and feel whole again.
Woohoo! You have a beautiful line in one of your books. Can I be more kind, generous, forgiving, and tolerant? Kind, generous, forgiving, tolerant. What can you
Mhm.
tell us about that?
Well, I strive to be that every day. It's one of when I meditate in the morning, those four words are certainly very present.
Mhm.
May I be more loving, may I be more kind, may I be more open to spirit. Um, Tolerance, I've come to understand it. You even have to go beyond tolerance. It's not enough to tolerate somebody. We don't want to tolerate. So, if I had to rewrite that, I might even take the word out. I think it's more important to be compassionate and to embrace differences and embrace people that feel differently than you with full love, not just tolerate that they are there, but truly embrace them and have compassion for them. So I think that's so, so important to create inner peace in your own life.
Thank you. And to change the world around you, because it occurs to me, if you watch, and we were picking on the news before the show, lovingly, but picking on the news.
Yes.
OMG. But it occurs that the news, no matter what you listen to, is going to pit you against them, you against this person, you against how could that person do that? But really, to me, it's the arm picking on the other foot. If we embrace with love, kindness, and compassion,
Hmm.
won't that do more good than saying, well, you did this and you did that and shame on you?
100%. 100%. And yes, there's a lot of negativity out there and people doing whatever, but I am also convinced that if they knew a better way, they'd probably be doing it a better way. And that's where compassion comes in because, there's different people out there that have, perhaps not enough knowledge to be able to do it a little bit better. And they're probably doing the best they can given what they have.
Let me
And
have you
that's
repeat
where,
that because that is so important. If you understand this one concept that Lexi has said, it becomes so much easier to love that person up or at least have kindness and compassion for them.
well, yes, they're doing the best they can. And given the information they have at that moment, they're probably doing the best they absolutely can. And if they knew a better way, I believe they would choose it. So, in that respect, everyone's right. And I also sometimes visualize somebody as a little baby. Babies are so innocent. So whoever that person is who's, you know, whatever has committed some horrific act, visualize that person coming out of the womb as an innocent little child. At one point, they were an innocent, beautiful baby. Okay. And so that helps me also to be a little more compassionate.
Woohoo! We're on the same page because Jessica's like, well, be careful when you say that to people. But I see that innocent child in everyone. Even that person that's done this, yes, they're still there. And whatever
Right.
we feel is real right now, it is real. We do make a difference. We don't want pain. We don't want suffering. At the same time, it's part of the cosmic journey that we're all on together. Together.
Yes. Yes. There is no other. It's all of us. There's no other.
So, on that note, since we're talking about peace, and I really want to dive into this, do you believe visualizing world peace can help us all come together?
Absolutely. I remember years ago talking about another book that changed my life was
Yeah.
by Shakti Gowan, and it
Yes.
was about the power of visualization. And absolutely, visualizing peace in your own life, visualizing peace for the world, coming together collectively, I think is very powerful. We can all do our part in that. Absolutely.
I love that book. We had Mark Allen, the publisher, on that book as well. We didn't have
Okay.
Shakti, but we had Mark Allen on it. A-
Okay.
And so, what does visualizing peace look like to you?
Well, for me, meditation is visualizing peace because in silence, um, I feel that's where I can create infinite possibilities in my life. And silence is so powerful. So, as a meditator, when I go into my own peaceful zone and my own peaceful flow,
Mhm.
and I'm there, I'm not visualizing peace per se, but I'm experiencing it. And I think that's very powerful. And I think if the more we experience peace within ourselves, the more I think we can manifest it out in the world.
What would you tell to someone who, I'm going to pick on mom for a moment. Mom, I love you very, very much if you're listening to this, but mom would be scared to meditate because she'd be scared of the non peace she would find in the silence.
I would suggest you start out with 1 minute of silence, just letting go. It's one step at a time. I think so often, meditative teachers say, oh, you can do 30 minutes, 20 minutes. No, no, no. Let's just do 1 minute a day. You sit quietly. You don't even have to call it meditation. Just sitting quietly, focusing on breath, maybe focusing on what you're grateful for just for a minute and just listen to a little bit of silence. And I don't think 1 minute would scare hardly anyone and just experience that.
Do you think world peace is an inside job?
Oh, absolutely. Everything starts from within.
So if we're looking to change the world outside here, we're affronted by this, we're scared of that, there's a vote on this going on. Do we dive in? What's our first step?
I think is figuring out some kind of a meditative practice for yourself.
Mhm.
And I encourage people to set a timer for 1 minute and do 1 minute a day and then increase it to 2 minutes and 3 minutes. And you can sit in your car while you're waiting for your child or picking up someone and just sit quietly. I think it starts with really becoming comfortable with that peace that lies, I believe, within every single one of us.
Thank you. How are love and peace intertwined? And I'm thinking again about your mom.
Well, my mother she exemplified love. She was probably the most positive person I've ever met. Uh, and she, wherever she went, was just a loving, outgoing person. And I think that when you have connection with people, because she would give everybody a hug and she would look you in the eye and go, "Hi, Michael, nice to meet you." That creates an inner peace because you're connecting. I think it's isolation that creates fear and depression. But when you're connecting on a heart level to people, and we can do that by looking in someone's eyes, a stranger, and smiling, or when you're at the post office, picking up your stamps, just saying, "Have a nice day." That's a connection. And I believe those connections create some inner peace for all of us because I think as human beings, we don't want to be isolated. We want to connect. And indeed, you are. Somehow there's some energy that's being exchanged.
You talk about your mom working in a mental institution. There's a German patient, hasn't spoken for 20 years, and I imagine is
Yes,
just very walled up in her own world, maybe without much peace. And your mom managed to, I'm pulling a giant lever here, Archimedes her way in. How'd she
yes.
do it?
Well, it was an incredible story. I mean, she said every day she would go in and say, "How are you?" It was love. Okay, as I look back on it, and everyone says, "Oh, this person doesn't talk. They don't ever speak. They haven't spoken in 20 years." So my mother's like, there every day with her smile and her open heart and her love. And even if the person didn't say anything, "Good morning. Hope you're having a good day," hugging the person, feeding the person. And then after a couple of years of my mother working there, I remember she came home and she couldn't believe it that this person said to her in a broken language, "You're always smiling." And so that smiling was her love, giving out to this person that over time opened up that person's heart, and that person actually spoke. And I remember nobody even believed my mother that this person spoke, and I know she did. So
Awesome, awesome. So I'm gonna give you a challenging one here, something that I have a feeling you learned more than you bargained for. There was a gentleman in your life, based on your books, I don't know if it was 7 years ago, I don't know if it was a decade ago, who walked away with a lot of people's savings, including yours.
right.
What did you learn? How did you find peace? And did love even fit into the alchemy that had to take place after this?
Well, that was a very difficult time for me because it was betrayal. And the money I had invested with this human being, I wanted to use for charity work and give away. And he stole from a lot of charities, by the way. Um, so at the time, I was very angry.
Mhm.
I was very disappointed. It was violating somebody I thought I could trust that would, you know, save this money so I could do good work in the world. How dare them? I remember going through like rage and anger
Mhm.
for quite some time. And then I realized, you know what? It's not going to change him. He's already in prison anyway. And it's not going to change the outcome. And so I can live with anger and rage,
Yeah.
or I can let it go and give it up and just say, you know what? That's life and people have hardships. And again, going back to what my mother said, you have to make yourself strong. Life is for the living. I have my health. I started thinking about all the things I'm grateful for. And yes, I'm sorry I don't have those funds to give away, but I can still give my time and talent. and do other things and make a difference in the world. So it was a year of like coming full circle of reframing it, realizing that the anger would only hurt me and it would interfere with my peace and interfere with my journey. And I have to take responsibility for that. And it was time to let it go. And I did.
Woohoo! If I flip through the dial of the internet, whatever that means, and I go on an article here, an article there, I can actually feel, ooh, this makes me feel good. I want to read more of it. Or, ooh, I'm drawn into it, but it really feels bad. How important is it? Because this is what you're talking about here. Is Paul Selig, who we've had on the show many times. His guides talk about going to the upper room. How
Mm.
important is it to choose what we want to input, either from our 5 or 6 senses or more, or just where from our mind to choose a higher vibrational thought?
I think it's everything. It's called discernment. And I think it's very, very important. Whether it's the movies you watch, the articles you read, turn it off because what you put in absolutely affects your psyche and your thoughts. And like we said, what is consciousness? It's our thoughts. And thoughts being put in there, our own thoughts, thoughts from others that are uplifting. And just energetically, I think there are some negative things out there that you need to say no. You need to have discernment, surround yourself with some light and say, that's not for me. I wish them well, but I'm not going to watch that. I'm not going to see that. Even when choosing friends, it's very important. Discernment is very important. I think that comes with time and wisdom. I think it's something that children struggle with, because I look back at my own life when I was younger, I was more of a people pleaser. I wanted to please everybody and make everybody happy. And now I say, okay, I only have a limited amount of energy and time. So I want to make a difference. I want to prioritize. I want to discern who I'm with, what I read, what I work on within myself. So that's sort of, wisdom that comes with age. But I think anyone can learn it at any age if they have that awareness. I think it's very important.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I was thinking yesterday about my early years. I wasn't introduced to any of these concepts until I finally went to a Native American ceremony, I guess in my mid-20s, before I actually, I'd been down the religious rabbit hole of all Western religions plus, but nobody had shared this with me. Had somebody said, you can choose who you surround yourself with, what you surround yourself with, what you ingest. And I'm not just talking about food. And you can, by doing that, change your whole environment, your whole world, and find greater peace. I would have said,
Hmm.
what?
Right. And, that's something I would love our young people to get early.
Yes,
But
yes, yes. There's a beautiful line you have in this book. Like a superb Anatoly Ivanov mosaic, we are called to create a new masterpiece, and that has that word peace, within ourselves and within our world.
And I'm looking behind you, and that's Anatoly Ivanov. The cover of What is Peace is Anatoly Ivanov. Yes, he's a dear friend of mine. He grew up in Russia, and he's amazing. He's a wonderful artist, very deep, very spiritual.
Beautiful. And that is what we get to do with our lives. No matter where we start, no matter where we're at, we can make a beautiful mosaic out of it, can't we?
100%. I mean, the analogy of like we have a canvas that's just blank, and it's up to us what we put on it and how we create it. And 100%, we can create a beautiful painting like the one you're sitting in front of right now. And that can be our life.
We'll do a little movie magic here. There we
There
go.
you go. Yeah, that's
So
it.
everybody can take a look at that beautiful, beautiful image. And now we'll come
Yes.
back. What is the relationship between you have 5 different books, if I got that right? Yes, 5 different books. I've been
Yes.
going through all of them. Um, what is the relationship between spirit, peace, and love?
Well, my first book was What is Spirit? And that took me on a journey where I interviewed people from all walks of life, asking them, what is spirit?
Mhm.
Um, and getting many, many different responses. And then, of course, I write about it myself. And after I finished that book, I thought, okay, so what is spirit? That transcended all religions and all traditions, so what else am I going to write about? And I thought, well, what is peace? What is peace? Is it inner peace, outer peace, world peace? let me go ask all these people and figure that one out. And then I thought, well, you know, there's love. What is really love? And at the end of love, I said, love never dies. And then I went, oh, I have to write what is death? Because if love never dies, then what is death? And then after that was the most challenging book to write. And yet it's my favorite book of all because I think our greatest teacher is death. We're all going to die. It's a matter of when. So, how do you want to live your life? How do you want to be remembered? And that pulls together what is spirit, what is peace, what is love. You want to live with those components in your life. You want to live a peaceful life, a loving life, a life filled with spirit and joy. And at the end of the day, you know, you're going to ask yourself those questions. How much did I love? How much peace did I feel?
My wife and I, since Mole, our most recent pet, passed away, we've been practicing something we call laughter therapy. And we will go sit on the couch, and this is very platonic. We will just tickle the heck out of each other until
I
we're
like that.
basically crying.
Good. That's good. You're releasing all these positive hormones in your body. I mean, Norman Cousins was the pioneer of that. And I write about that, of course, in my What is Laughter book. Laughter is incredibly healing. And I see even our society becoming far too serious. I think there are appropriate times to laugh at ourselves, laugh with others, tickle each other like you and your wife do, and release all the happy hormones in our bodies. We need to laugh. It's healing. It's very healing.
Woohoo!
Keep that up. That's a good idea.
Thank you. So let's double back. I can't believe I'm going to say it this way. Let's double back to death. How
Mhm.
much more peace will we have in our lives if we are focused? Not necessarily each moment. We don't want to go around macabre going, I'm going to die. But if we are focused and fully understanding how temporary and temporal this world is.
Well, in our Western culture, death is very taboo, as you know. So it's a taboo subject, and people are not wanting to talk about it in our Western culture. And the reality is, as I said earlier, we're all going to die. It's a matter of when. I hope to live a long, long life, but we're all going to die. And if you can just understand that and not dwell on it, but just grip that for a minute that you're going to die, it's a matter of when. Okay, I'm not going to be here forever. That in itself, I think, changes your thinking about how you want to live. Knowing that, when you're young, you think you're going to live forever, but the reality is none of us are. So, how do you want to live your life? What kind of a person do you want to be? Do you want to make a difference in the world or not? But those introspective questions, once you say, that's why I think death is our greatest teacher, allows us to explore who we are, why we're here, how we want to live, um, what we want to do every day. Do we want to wake up positive or negative? And if you're going to, like I remember when I was young that there was a saying, if this was the last day of your life, how would you live it? Well, that's pretty profound. What if this was the last day of your life? Would you live it differently? Those are important questions to ask ourselves because it teaches us how to live more fully.
There's a 1940s movie, and I might need to break in a second and rescue Sir Meowsers, who is doing his best to beat down the
I
studio
can't hear him.
store.
Okay.
It's so good. um, there's a movie from the 40s, and there's a remake, and it's actually from Broadway called Our Town. And
Mhm.
and the protagonist passes away, goes to heaven, and has a choice of coming back for one day to any day she wants in her life. And I guess the angels recommend that she come back to a normal, average day, not to an extra special day. And she
Okay.
came back to a random day when she was 12
Mm.
and found it to be the most special, incredible experience, so much so that she actually go back sooner to heaven because she couldn't take just how amazing that day was. Can't we
Wow.
live each day as if it were that? Because it is, isn't it?
It is, Michael, and that's beautiful awareness. It starts with awareness to that. Absolutely, we can do that. Every day is precious. And as I'm getting older and I go, it's a gift to get older. It's a gift to have my health and be alive. It's a gift. Life is so precious, and every single minute is a gift.
Woohoo! All right, we can't have a discussion on peace without having, to me, I mean, you don't need this, but I think it's important, prayer. And your mom said, because I pray before the show, I'm actually running through prayer as I'm doing this and sending you lots and lots of
I
love,
know.
Lexie.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Your mom says every little prayer helps.
Yes. My mother was so incredible. And before she died, she said, "Let's write my obituary." I go, "Oh, wow. Okay." So we started writing her obituary. This was 3 or 4 years before she died. We were on an airplane.
Mhm.
She goes, "That way, when I die, you will not have to wonder how you want my funeral to be, what prayers you want that I want to be said, the Lord's Prayer." She wanted the Lord's Prayer in there. And I said, "That's a wonderful idea." And it was a great gift because upon her death, I was so sad. And yet I went to her Bible and I found all these prayers she had in there that meant something to her. I put them in this beautiful brochure that I handed out to everybody. And we read those prayers together. And I felt so connected to my mother because they were prayers that meant something to her, prayers that she used in her own life to find meaning and to find peace. And I was so thankful that she had the awareness and consciousness to 3 years before she died to tell me where all those prayers were in her Bible, and here's her obituary, and this is what she once said about herself. That's also a great gift. And that is why I put in the back of my book, What is Death? Pages where you can write down how you would like your funeral to be, who would you like invited, songs you want there. Most people don't want to talk about death in this life. That's okay. Go into my book, What is Death? Write it all down and tell your family, upon my death, go to the book, What is Death? And I wrote down all my wishes, all my prayers, everything that's important to me, so that the funeral will reflect me, the person who's dying, and not wondering what would they want, where do they want, do they want to be cremated, do they want this, do they want that. Most people have no clue and they're already under so much stress. And so it's a great gift, I think, to give somebody, your favorite prayers or your favorite thoughts about your death.
This is going to be challenging, but I'm going to gift it to my parents. And I want to see if they will actually read it and do that, because maybe you can share for a second, and then I want to dive into the Dalai Lama and some monk fun. We'll put it that way in a minute here. But the last day that your mom spent before transition, could you call it joyous? And if not joyous, at least peaceful?
It was extremely peaceful. I've been with two people the moment they died, my mother and also my husband's uncle. And my husband's uncle died before my mother. So he was in bed, and I put my hands on his shoulders and I said, "I'm visualizing 100,000 angels with you right now, Nat, and it's okay to let go." And he was in his 90s and he kind of fluttered his eyes and he just let go. And it was the most peaceful, loving experience of my life. And I had the same thing with my mother. I told her, "I love you, Mom. You're the greatest mom in the whole world. Love will never die. I love you." And she actually opened her eyes and said, "I love you."
And she'd been
And
in
then
a
she
coma.
closed. Yeah. Well, a coma state, I would say, because she was on morphine because of the pain. She had congested heart failure. So she opened her eyes and said, "I love you." And then I had my hands on her and she just peacefully, peacefully left. And it was so beautiful. It's the most incredible experience. Those two experiences have been life changing for me. And it took away, I never really had a lot of fear around death anyway, but it took away any fear I might have had around death. I don't have any fear around death.
Woohoo! I don't have fear around death at this point. I do have selective attachment syndrome.
Of course. Of course. We all do. We all do. And the reality is, when we die, whoever we leave behind, they will be okay. They will be okay in time.
So from there, you have a very strong connection with Tibetan monks. How did that come about, first off? And then what have you been learning from them about peace?
Well, they hold peace in their hearts and their being wherever they go, but they came into my life when I was writing What is Spirit? A friend of mine called me and she said, "The Tibetan Buddhist monks are here, and I visualize them in your dining room on that big table, all having dinner with you." And I said, "Well, that's great, but I'm on deadline because my publisher's Hay House, and I have to get this book, What is Spirit, written. So have them come over for like an hour." So I opened
There
my
is
door.
such an irony here, Lexie.
I know, just wait. I open the door and they walk in, these Tibetan Buddhist monks, the most peaceful, beautiful. This is like 25 years ago, okay? Human beings I'd ever experienced. And I didn't let them leave for like 8 hours. We had dinner. I asked them questions. I was like, oh, wow, they're the most beautiful human beings I've ever encountered. So that's how they walked into my life, and they have been truly a very important part of my life all these years.
It's fascinating because you talk about in your books that you've balanced. I guess you had what, an Ayurvedic doctor friend of yours around age 20 who was taking your different pulses and said you're such a contemplative, peaceful person, wrapped up in a triple A world that you've built for yourself.
And it's interesting you should say that. When he told me that, it brought tears. I mean, it was so much the truth for me that I remember just crying. I burst out into tears. And I said to him, that is so true. My childhood was very peaceful. I was born in Idaho. I remember spending days at a time by myself in the forest, picking flowers and doing prayer work and being very peaceful. And even as a teenager, it was fairly peaceful. We moved around a great deal, but I always had this security of my home life. I had a wonderful mother and father and brother and sister. We were a closely knit family. So we moved around a great deal. My father was an engineer, but I always would just come home and I was content just being by myself with my horses, my animals, my dogs, my cats. Um, and then, of course, when my father died and in college and working, and you become like a type A personality and you override some of that peaceful early childhood out of survival and wanting to work and make money on your own and all that. So when this doctor said, you came in very like a monk, with these contemplative yearnings, and you've overridden all that by being this type A personality, a businesswoman, and doing all these things. And I remember going, wow, that's very true. And so I try to balance my life now. I still am very much type A, but I really have learned to balance it and have my quiet time and my meditative time. And I'm much more in balance, I think, than I've ever been. But that wasn't always the case.
And I believe that's the case for many of us, that we come in here in this joyous, childlike, not childish, even as children, we have more of
Hmm.
peace about us. We have more of joy about us. And then we're told, get busy, crack down. You've got to succeed. You've got to achieve. Gotta. I don't usually
Yeah.
watch Jackie Chan movies anymore, but I was watching for an arc yesterday. I guess it was what, The Karate Kid something remake. And what I was watching is this arc, and I'm like, what I'm really watching is the inner struggle going on. But there was this 10-year-old girl who's up on stage getting yelled at by her teacher that you need to buckle down and get serious now because this is so important for your family. And my heart
Mm.
is just breaking,
Mm.
going, wait a second. If we don't learn how to be a child when we're a child, which we actually know how to do, then we end up in this chase for our whole lives. How do we find peace when we're stuck in the chase?
That's so true, and it's a concern I have for young people today. I think there's a lot of pressure. That's why anxiety is so high in young people today. I believe in happy childhoods if it's possible, and I think being able to get in touch with that inner child as we get older is so important. That's where the laughter would come in, where we laugh more and we take things a little less seriously. Like visualize that little child you were and how you would play around and do, and life was grand. Or, for myself, walking in the forest and being peaceful. It's so important. And I'm very concerned about young people having a shorter childhood, um, a more stressful childhood. Social media plays, a part of that. It's good and bad in that respect. Um, that's why I love the C program, the social emotional ethical learning program, or Goldie Hawn's Mind Up program. Whenever we can teach these children to self regulate and go within and find peace at a young age, those are tools they can use for the rest of their lives.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I was going to ask you about the Dalai Lama and peace, but since we're talking about childlike joy, what have you
Mm.
learned from the Dalai Lama?
He has that childlike joy. Even when he's lecturing and doing very deep esoteric teachings, he'll stop for a moment and start laughing. He'll go, hee, or he'll crack a joke. I remember seeing him in New York and, he was doing these very profound teachings. And he said, out of nowhere, I don't like crows. And we're all like, what did he just say? He goes, they squawk a lot. And I realized his brilliance because we were really deep and very heavy and in our head. And him saying something so off the wall, not even related to the teachings, allowed us for a moment to let go and become a little lighter. Okay. And I realized how brilliant that really was. And we all started laughing. And then he went back into his deep teachings. And he is a master of that balance of keeping laughter and childlike qualities along with a keen intellectual mind. We can live too much in our minds and not connect to our heart and laughter.
Thank you. How have the monks taught you? And it's interesting because there's a picture on your website of the monks. Actually, I think it's a video. Yeah, it's a video of the monks being pulled around at a lake in Aspen on a giant inner tube raft. What have the monks taught you about staying in your heart?
Well, the monks are, to be a geshe is like having 3 PhDs, and Rinpoches are high level masters. So, and the monks that come here are so well educated, they're so brilliant, and yet they allow themselves to be childlike and have fun and laugh. And I feel that one of the roles I can play, because I know that they're so, regimented and they have a strict schedule. They don't have a lot of time, perhaps, to play enough. That I try to create playful situations where I take them to the lake and they go on an inner tube and we laugh and we giggle. Or I took them whitewater rafting and some of them didn't even know how to swim.
Oh my God.
And they said they put the
Not
life
this year,
jackets
I
on.
hope.
No, but a few years ago, and they told me later they didn't know how to swim. And I said, "Weren't you fearful?" And they said, "No, it just helped us work on that of letting go of the fear and putting the life jacket on and trusting that if something happened, they would still be okay." And they worked through their fear, but they didn't tell me till afterwards. And so, they've taught me so many things, and it's just by their being, their wisdom, spending quality time with them. They teach you how to live more fully. They're always very present, very present. Um, they walk around with this inner calm because they meditate hours and hours every day. Um, and it's just wonderful to witness that. Wow. Wow. It's a wowie. Um, it's a joy to have them come into my life every year. And I've been doing that for about 23 years now. I spend 2 or 3 weeks out of my year, and it's the best 2 or 3 weeks of my life, really.
What's your mission then, Lexie?
My mission?
Yeah.
I guess, to every day to try to be more loving, more compassionate. Um, I'm writing another book about compassion. Um, Hopefully, every day have more connection with people. Remember that kindness does matter, and just live every day fully and aware as much as I can, not asleep, but aware of every moment. Um, to walk in peace and compassion and love. And when I forget, to forgive myself and come back to it, because we're not perfect. I do forget, but to remind myself more quickly now to come back into that moment.
Thank you. Are there, going back to the monks or to your first teacher, are there remembrances that you get on a daily or weekly basis to, oh, I should be, not should be more like them, but a reminder of how they're living to bring back into your life?
Certainly, yes, of course. I mean, I've had wonderful teachers in my life and I've learned a great deal. I've grown a great deal from that. And I think the key is now to integrate that so that it's just part of who I am, and be that, just be it, not so much talk about it. Like my father didn't talk about things and he wasn't preachy, he lived it. He was kind. He was nice. He was peaceful. I think that's more powerful living it than talking about it.
Is there a reminder you give yourself on a regular basis?
And I do morning meditations, and it's, when I start out saying I want to be more loving today, more peaceful, more compassionate, more kind, so I have a few little things like that. But then I even let that go, and I just settle into the silence, and I allow whatever's supposed to be there come through.
Which gets us to the subtitle of each of your books. Why are they called Messages from the Heart?
Thank you. Yes, that was intentional. I think if you're going to ask yourself, what is peace? What is love? What is spirit? What is death? What is anything important in your life? You must move to your heart to answer those. They're not truly intellectual questions. You can start with the intellect, but until you connect it to your heart, I think it's very difficult to get in touch with that.
Beautiful. And so we'll go into a meditation in a couple minutes, and maybe we can dive into the heart for a few minutes. In
I
fact,
love that.
before I have direct people where to find your books, going back to your mom, she's kind of been the superhero today, mom and dad. So,
Yes.
book one of Corinthians, and now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love.
100%. Always,
Woohoo.
always.
Where can people go to find your beautiful books, Lexie, and to find out more?
Well, they are available on Amazon, but I have a website, spiritpeacelove.com.
What a beautiful, beautiful name. So if you didn't catch spiritpeacelove.com, a beautiful, beautiful name, come on over to inspirenationshow.com and we'll get you over to spiritpeacelove.com. You had one of your teachers, Kabir Helminski, has a
Hmm.
prayer in here which to me is almost identical to a Hawaiian prayer, Ho'oponopono. I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you. What does that mean to you?
It means everything. I mean, my father lived that.
Your dad would add, and let me give you a hug.
Yes, my dad would add, let me, and he hugged me every day of my life. So I was very fortunate. But if you can live by those principles, I think your life will be peaceful, will be loving, and filled with a lot of joy.
Woohoo! This has been beautiful, Lexie. Any last words of wisdom you want to share with people before we go into a meditation?
Well, I believe everyone is a wisdom teacher. So the wisdom lies within each and every one of us. So I encourage everyone to just go within, even if it's a minute a day, and get in touch with that inner counselor, that inner wisdom that lies within all of us.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I just,
Thank you, Michael.
I almost just want to bask in non-words for a moment now. I said about beforehand that wouldn't be a good way to do a show necessarily, but I'm just feeling the love, Lexie. It feels really, really
Oh,
good.
I feel it from you as well, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you. You do hugs, I imagine.
Yes, yes.
Big, big hugs. All right. Would you mind leading us in meditation, whatever you'd like, whatever length you'd like, about anything you'd like, or nothing at all?
I would love to. This is a meditation that I often do with people. It's short, but it, you'll see. So I just say start by getting comfortable wherever you are.
And I'll do one little interjection. If you're driving down the road, let's do this later.
Yes, yes, do this later if you're driving, but if you're seated, allow your mind to settle into silence with your eyes closed and start by focusing on breath as you breathe in and breathe out. And start by asking yourself, who am I? Beyond the roles that I play every day, who am I really? Who am I? And now ask yourself, what do I want beyond my necessities? What do I really want? And now ask yourself, what is my purpose? What are my gifts to heal myself and others through service? What is my purpose? And now ask yourself, what am I grateful for? What do I feel grateful for as I center into my heart? What am I grateful for? And now take a deep breath and let go of those questions. And remember that your essential nature, your soul, is silent. And silence leads us to infinite possibilities in our lives. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and bring your awareness back to Michael.
Who is in La La Land? Woohoo! Thank you so, so much, Lexie.
No, thank you. I'm very grateful. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much.
This has been so beautiful. This has been such a treat.
Well, I've loved every minute of it. We'll do it
Awesome.
again.
I would love that. So got to crank
Okay.
it back up for the finish here. Drive my sound engineer crazy as I'm so quiet at this point, but I'm just
Right.
in the blissed out.
Good. Good.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get what is peace, and begin blah, 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 blah. Get what is peace and begin discovering more peace in your life today. And shine bright. Woohoo!
Woohoo! Thank you.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love you. I love you. I love you. This was awesome, Lexie.
I enjoyed it. I loved every second of it. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so, so much. I hope to see you again soon.
Would love it, would love it, would love it. I just had the most beautiful, peaceful, heart-opening interview with Lexie Brockway Potamkin on What is Peace. To check out more beautiful, heart-opening interviews, click here, subscribe below.